I mean, we were losing our shirts. You know those stories where you hear, musicians are sitting at a bar and they get out an envelope and they write a tune that goes platinum, right? All those stories exist. Well, I can tell you that one of those stories exists in the automobile business. We went from losing probably $100 million a year to 7 years later making almost $2 billion.
Jeff Stearns, connected through cars. If they're bigwigs, we'll have them on the show. And yes, we'll talk about cars and everything else. Here he is now, Jeff Stearns.
The simplest plans are normally the best.
This is a good one. A lot of people don't know this about Rick Wagner. He arrived in Brazil in August of 1991. On the same plane as my wife. I got there a little earlier. I convinced my wife to go down to Brazil, and I told her it was only going to be for 2 years. Let's go for 2 years. Well, we ended up staying for 9, but that's not the relevant portion of the story.
And did it open with "Honey, I Need a Favor," if I recall?
In the month that I asked my wife to do that, 9 to 5 came out as a movie. Okay, and if you remember the closing scene, Dabney Coleman is told, "Son, you're doing a great job, and I'm sending you down to Brazil so we fix the operation down there too." So my wife says, "This isn't like a 9 to 5 thing, is it?" And I said, No. This is a great opportunity for me, and I went down there. So I was down there in February, and from February to August, I think I spent a total of 30 minutes with my boss before Wagner came down. Okay. Wagner came down. At the time, we were doing a potential program with Suzuki to bring a small car into Brazil. I mean, we were losing our shirts in Brazil. We were selling 100,000 cars, maybe 150,000 cars, and we were losing our shirts. Okay. Which is why Wagner was sent down there. And we were doing a program with Suzuki trying to get a small car down there. And we were fairly well along. And Rick came down, said, and you know those stories where you hear, musicians are sitting at a bar and they get out an envelope and they write a tune that goes platinum, right? All those stories exist. Well, I can tell you that one of those stories exists in the automobile business, which is a deep secret revealed, okay? I'm sitting in his office. He'd been there maybe about a month, and maybe I don't have the total time correct. And he pulls out this piece of paper, and he said, "Look, I know we're working with Suzuki on a small car, but that's the wrong program. And I know Osama, and when we cancel the program, you and I are going to go over there together and explain to Suzuki why we can't do their program." And he really took that serious, okay, because General Motors had a relationship with Suzuki, and he didn't want, and Jack Smith at the time, who was in charge of overseas, had a relationship, and they didn't want to destroy that. But he says, "Here's what we're going to do," and he got out this piece of paper, and he said, "Cars we're going to get from Opel, and trucks we're going to get from North America. And we're going to get current on the program, and we're going to stay current. We're going to have a small car, mid car, large car. We're going to have a full-size pickup. We're going to have a Suburban, and we're going to have an S10. That's it. Go get it. That's your job." That was the plan. Okay, there wasn't no presentation to the board, etc. This is what we're going to do, because in one trip that I took with him to see Bob Stempel, who was the president of General Motors at the time, he took Rick aside, and I was there, and he said, "Rick, you're on your own. I don't have any money to give you. Whatever it is that you're going to do, got to be self-funding. You got to get your own investment. It's on all you guys down there. I can't help you."
Warren, I'm sorry. You mentioned this, I remember on our original recording, when they need to get their own investment, does this mean find an investor? Does that mean issue bonds? Does this mean another round of stock? What does that mean?
Look, if you are doing an investment program in General Motors, you would put together the business case, and you would go to the executive committee to ask for approval, which means they were backing the risk, right? Whatever Bob Stempel said or not, all of our programs were in essence risk profiled by the executive committee of General Motors and the management of General Motors. No, it wasn't going out and issuing bonds. Now, I told you a little story about Turkey where it was the case that we were looking for a private investor. Different story for a different day. But no, this is backed by, if I can be clear, the executive committee taking on the risk. What was the difference that Stempel was telling us? Don't come back with the typical General Motors program where, oops, we missed. Right? That's what he was saying implicitly, right? Versus a 1986 EK program or some other program where the business case just doesn't make sense. But we got to have something new. So make up the number so it works. Okay? So he was telling us, you're on your own. And I think Rick, I remember he took that message back and said, we're on our own, and the stuff that we're going to submit to the corp is going to be airtight. We're going to be conservative. We're going to make this thing work. Now, I had a full head of black hair in August of 1991. That wasn't the case when I left after 9 years, okay? That simple plan was the plan. And each time we did that particular investment, whether it was for the Corsa or the Astra or Vectra, the Omega was the original large car, whether it was for the S10 or the new pickup truck, full-size Silverado pickup truck, each of those were done, and I don't think any of them didn't deliver on the revenue that was promised. And I can't tell you what the number was. I'm not sure Joe Flores, who was the CFO at the time, ever really told management what the number was. We went from losing probably $100 million a year to 7 years later making almost $2 billion. But it was by saying, okay, there wasn't a lot of, let's do 19 different strategic alternatives. What's the upside? What's the downside? It was a pretty simple plan. We're going to get our cars from Opel, and we're going to get our trucks from North America. That's it. Go get it. And that was simple. And all of the work was on the execution rather than on the wringing your hands over what we're going to do. And I thought that was pretty effective. And the only other time I ever thought of that was when Chris Hill, when I was in Poland and the MD of Poland, Chris Hill was the ambassador to the United States ambassador to Poland, and he was a war buff. And he took us to Normandy. We all went for the weekend to Normandy to tour the beaches and all the stuff. And I looked in the souvenir shop, and they were selling, here's Eisenhower's plan of the launch of D-Day. He did it all on one page, which apparently is, I guess, urban legend in the military, that he actually drew that up on one page. And when I looked at that, I actually thought of Rick's plan for Brazil, how simple it was in terms of its execution. And so that's my, make it simple. Everybody will get what you're supposed to be doing.
This has been Jeff Stearns, Connected Through Cars.